Today's lesson is why climate change may be causing slower winds. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And along with all the other bad news that climate change is bringing to us, higher temperatures, less rain, forest fires all around the world, even at weird times of the year, apparently winds are slowing down, and this is also being caused by climate change. Maybe slower winds are good news for the forest fires? I'm trying to find a positive and a negative here. But yes, apparently because the world is getting warmer, the winds are getting slower. And that can have all sorts of strange effects on daily life.
So I guess today we're going to find out why climate change is causing the winds to be slower. Okay,
exactly.
So let's listen to part 1 of today's lesson, why climate change may be causing slower winds.
Why climate change may be causing slower winds. Strong winds mess up hairstyles, stir up dust, and make outdoor sports challenging to play. On the other hand, if winds are too gentle for too long, it could be a sign of a serious issue with the planet's climate. Unfortunately, it turns out that winds have been slowing around the globe in recent years, causing concern among scientists worldwide. The term global terrestrial stilling is used to refer to this gradual decrease in wind speeds that has been occurring all over the planet. One recent example was the wind drought experienced in much of Europe in 2021. Wind speeds in many places were 15% below the annual average, while they were even lower in other areas. And more wind droughts may be on the way. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change forecasts that average annual wind speeds globally could drop by up to 10% by 2100.
大家好，第一部分我们来介绍片语 stir up， 它的意思是扬起尘土等，也可以是挑起情绪等，最后也可以是引起争辩或是事端等的意思。例如Stirring up sediment in a clear pond can make the water murky. 在清澈的池塘中搅动沉积物可以使水变得浑浊。又或者说 Marcus keeps trying to stir up trouble by spreading rumors about his colleagues. Marcus 一直想要兴风作浪，散布关于同事的谣言。接着是名词 globe， 表示地球或是球状物，也可以是地球仪的意思。可以说The museum has a collection of treasures from every corner of the globe. 这间博物馆收藏了来自全球各个角落的宝藏。又或者说 The man chose the destination of his next trip by spinning a globe and seeing where his finger landed. 该男子透过旋转地球仪并查看手指的位置来选择下一次旅行的目的地。下一个看到片语 on the way， 指的是即将到来或是在途中。例如According to the author's website, her next book will soon be on the way. 根据该作家的网站表示，他的下一本书即将出版。或者 Michael is on the way to his mother's house for a holiday. Michael 正在前往他妈妈家度假的路上。
We are back. So yes, let's find out. Let's answer this question, why climate change may be causing slower winds. Notice in this title, we don't have a question mark. This is not why climate change may be causing slower winds. We're not asking the question. We're basically explaining the question. And you'll often see a sentence structure like that in the title of an article, sort of piquing your curiosity, getting you to ask you, yeah, why does climate change? Well, I'll read this article and I'll find out why, because the article will explain why. So let's get into it. Strong winds mess up hairstyles, stir up dust, and make outdoor sports challenging to play. Okay, those are some negatives of strong winds. If you have a beautiful hairstyle that you combed to perfection, and then you go out, the wind can ruin your hairstyle very quickly. It can mess up your hairstyle. It looks like someone came over and just rubbed their hands on your hair, and so the wind has kind of ruined your hairdo. The wind can also stir up dust on a dusty day or on a dry dry day, the wind can come along and all that dust, all that kind of dry dirt that's lying on the ground or sand or things like that can get blown up, can get stirred up by the dust. In the same way, if you have some powder sitting at the bottom of a glass, if you put in a spoon and start to turn it, you start to spin that water, stir the water, it'll stir up that powder at the bottom of your glass. Now it's in the air, if it's dust and you're breathing it. And it can also make outdoor sports challenging to play. Anyone who's ever tried to catch a baseball that's been hit high in the air on a windy day will know that that baseball can waggle and weave and wobble on its way down. So a lot of sports, especially where you're throwing things around, can be hard to play on a windy day. So this is all true.
On the other hand, if winds are too gentle for too long, it could be a sign of a serious issue with the planet's climate.
It also makes it hard to fly a kite.
Yeah, so we don't like it when the winds are too strong, but it's not good if the winds are too gentle either. So why is that? Let's continue to find out.
Unfortunately, it turns out that winds have been slowing around the globe in recent years, causing concern among scientists worldwide. So there's been a general trend around the world in the past, 10, 20 years maybe, that winds are slowing down. And yes, this is around the world. We know that because it says around the globe. And the globe is the world. It's that ball shape that the world is. So if you are in a science class or a geography class and they have that little model Earth sitting on a table, it's about the size of a basketball, but it's covered in paper. It's covered in a map with all the countries. That is a globe. Or if you're ever lucky enough to go up into space and you look back towards the Earth will be in the shape of a globe. So it's like a ball, but it's a planet ball. It's the Earth as a map on a ball, showing us the locations of countries or just the world in general. Around the world or around the globe in recent years, winds have been slowing, and this is worrying scientists or causing concern among scientists worldwide or globally, we could also say.
That's right. And the wind slowing down, there's a term for it. The term global terrestrial stilling is used to refer to this gradual decrease in wind speeds that has been occurring all over the planet. So once again, it's happening all over the world. The winds are slowing down, and this can be called global terrestrial stilling.
Okay, that's the term for it that the scientists would use. One recent example was the wind drought experienced in much of Europe in 2021. Very interesting. I wasn't aware of this. There was a lot of bad weather news from around the world recently. This might have fallen through the cracks. But a wind drought, this is again a scientific term that climatologists or meteorologists, people who study weather, will use. A drought is generally when there's no rain. You wouldn't need to say a rain drought. Just if you say a drought, it means there's been much less rain than expected. The rivers and lakes are drying up. Farm animals and even people are having trouble getting drinking water. So a wind drought just means the wind is stopping. There isn't any wind anymore. And Europe apparently experienced this back in 2021. What happened back then? Wind speeds in many places were 15% below the annual average, while they're even lower in other areas. So yes, they have wind measuring machines. I think they're called anemometers, that people study wind speed like they study temperature, like they study rainfall. They can study wind speed, and they notice that over several months, probably, or the whole year, wind speeds were down 15% or even more in other areas. Normally, windy areas were not windy, and areas that normally got a little wind, it was just very still all the time.
Well, and more wind droughts may be on the way.
No.
So from all these studies by the climatologists and meteorologists, they are suggesting that we're going to see more wind droughts. They will be on the way. There's more on the way. Basically, when something is on the way, it is in the course of a journey. It's going to happen. It's about to come, about to arrive, or it might happen. It's about to happen. So we're going to see more wind droughts.
Yes, wind droughts. More of them may be coming. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change forecasts that average annual wind speeds globally could drop by up to 10% by 2100. 2100. So this is 75 or so years in the future. But if we project that far using computer models and whatnot, these very clever people at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it could be related to the United Nations. Basically, it's a bunch of smart scientists from around the world who get together once in a while to talk about the latest research, the latest discoveries, the latest findings. A panel is kind of a group of expert people that have been gathered together to share their opinions, to talk about things, hopefully to solve problems, maybe also to answer questions from reporters who want to know more and want to inform the public. If you're on a panel, that probably means you have some special knowledge of the topic being discussed, and you'll either talk about it in public or in a private meeting and then release your results and your findings in order to inform and educate people on an important issue. So this group of scientists, they predict that average annual wind speeds globally around the world could drop by up to 10% by 2100. So that would, of course, mean much higher drops than the 15 or higher than we saw. If it's 10% all around the world, imagine how much it would be dropping in certain areas of the planet where this effect is seen more. And none of this is good, and we're going to find out why it's happening and what trouble it might cause in the next part of our article. So let's check that out.
While one factor playing a part in stilling is the surface roughness from more and larger buildings acting as a drag on winds, climate change is believed to be the main cause. As we know, wind only exists on our planet because of differing temperatures in different regions, such as warm temperatures in the tropics and freezing temperatures at the poles. Therefore, when these temperature differences are decreased as a result of climate change, the intensity of winds is also decreased. Although the effects of global terrestrial stilling could greatly impact the wind energy industry, they could also affect various aspects of our daily life and environment. For example, they can have impacts on air travel, like causing airplanes to require longer runways due to reduced wind resistance. They can also reduce air quality in cities and disrupt the Gulf Stream, contributing to droughts and winter storms.
第二部分来看到 intensity 这个名词的意思是强烈、剧烈或是强度。例如 At the end of the concert, the crowd's cheering grew in intensity. 在演唱会的尾声，群众的喝彩越来越强烈。或者 The intensity of the sun in the desert is very hard on the eyes, so you should wear sunglasses. 沙漠中的阳光强度对眼睛来说非常刺眼，所以你一定要戴墨镜。接下来看到名词 runway 指的是飞机的跑道或是时装秀的伸展台。我们可以说 Maintenance crews regularly check the runway for debris to ensure the safety of aircraft during takeoff and landing. 维护团队定期检查跑道上的碎片，以确保飞机起飞和降落的安全。也可以说 The model walked down the runway in a stunning new design from the latest collection. 模特儿在伸展台上展示了来自最新系列的惊艳设计。接着我们看到动词 disrupt 表示扰乱、使中断或是打断。举例来说 A shortage of raw materials for the metal components disrupted the production chain for several weeks. 金属零件原料的短缺中断了生产链数周。再看一个例子 The sudden power outage disrupted the company's operations for several hours. 突然的停电扰乱了公司几小时的营运。
Okay, we are back, and the topic is global terrestrial stilling or a wind drought. Wind speeds are dropping. Why? Why is this happening? Well, global warming, but specifically, let's find out by reading the first sentence in the middle of our article here. It says, while one factor playing a part in stilling is the surface roughness from more and larger buildings acting as a drag on winds, climate change is believed to be the main cause. So there can be some local effects as cities get bigger and taller with tall buildings. This can actually affect wind speed. If you've ever stood in a corner with two large buildings on either side of you, you'll know that the wind can be much stronger stronger in certain areas, but ultimately this can actually slow wind down or disrupt normal wind patterns. So that is an effect, but that would be much more local than affecting the whole planet. Climate change is believed to be the main cause. The warming of the Earth is probably the main cause of this loss of wind speed.
As we know, wind only exists on our planet because of differing temperatures in different regions, such as warm temperatures in the tropics and freezing temperatures at the poles. Okay, so because our Earth or the planet has a lot of different regions with different types of climate, that's what causes wind. But as global warming starts to occur and the temperatures start to warm up, that could be one of the main reasons why wind speed might be slowing down. So here we have this word tropics, and the tropics is basically the region between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, and it's along the equator. So kind of like the middle of the Earth, the middle of the globe, along the lines of the equator. There are lots of countries, they're tropical countries, and they tend to be a little warmer. So that's basically the area where it's tropical, or that's where we refer to as being the tropics. And because we have the tropics and the poles, we have different types of temperature, warm and really cold. And that's what causes the Earth to have wind.
Exactly right. So the wind rushes from the high pressure areas, the high temperature areas, into the lower pressure areas, which are usually colder. Therefore, when these temperature differences are decreased as a result of climate change, the intensity of winds is also decreased. So basically, as the poles, as the northern part and the southern part, the colder areas of the planet get warmer, they are catching up in temperature, getting closer in temperature to the tropics, so there is less pushing and pulling the wind from the warmer high-pressure areas to the colder low-pressure areas. You can kind of think of it, if you have a river that drops a great distance from one part to another, the water will rush downhill, right? But if that hillside becomes much less high, less steep, the water will rush down much more slowly. And that's kind of what is happening here. But we're not going from high elevation, a high part of land, to a low part of land. We're going from a high pressure area to a low pressure area. But if that difference becomes less, the speed at which things move from one place to another, water down a hill or wind from a high pressure to low pressure area, the intensity of the winds is also decreased. The intensity basically means the power of the winds. So that is what is happening. So if these temperature differences are decreased, then the speed, the power, the intensity of the winds is also decreased, and that sort of translates to slower wind speeds. Now, what can this affect?
Although the effects of global terrestrial stilling could greatly impact the wind energy industry, they could also affect various aspects of our daily life and environment.
It's true, all those wind turbines we've put up to generate electricity won't be spinning so fast, so less electricity. That's bad.
Right. That's bad. A lot of people, they would have spent a lot of money to put up those wind turbines,
We're kind of
right?
relying on those too, but if there's less wind speed, they're not going to be running as effectively.
That's right. And also our environment, because the wind helps carry a lot of things like pollen through the air to repopulate vegetation and things like that. So this is really going to affect our environment.
That's absolutely true. And there will be more direct effects on our daily lives as well, as we read. For example, lower wind speeds, they can have impacts on air travel, like causing airplanes to require longer runways due to reduced wind assistance. Oh gosh, we're going to have to rebuild all the airports in the world or something like that. So yes, it might affect air travel because of course, airplanes rely on wind, especially when they're taking off. A big heavy airplane will usually fly into the wind and have more wind going over the wings to give it more lift, to lift that heavy aircraft off the ground. If the winds are suddenly much slower, these airplanes will need longer runways in order to get more speed, in order to get off the ground. And of course, runways take up a lot of land and property, and that could affect people who live in those areas. A runway is basically the long, straight road that airplanes take off and land from. Very long, usually several kilometers long piece of road. It's really just built like a road with lights along the side that airplanes take off and land from, adjacent to an airport.
They can also reduce air quality in cities and disrupt the Gulf Stream, contributing to droughts and winter storms.
Yes.
So when something disrupts something, it is to interrupt something by causing a disturbance or a problem. So how does this disrupt the Gulf Stream?
Well, it can disrupt the Gulf Stream because the Gulf Stream, which is basically a river of wind flying over the Atlantic Ocean, up the Caribbean, up the eastern seaboard of the U.S., and then crossing over to Europe, it carries warm air from the tropics, from the Caribbean area in South America up to Europe. That is why, if you look at a map, you'll notice that many parts of Europe are much further north than the cold cities of North America. Places like London are very far north, but they don't get a lot of snow during the winter because of the Gulf Stream. But without those winds pushing all that nice warm air across the ocean, you'll get more droughts in certain areas. It won't carry the rain and winter storms. We're already seeing more winter storms in places like the UK, which didn't used to get a lot of snow. The Gulf Stream is already being affected by global warming. This can only make that worse. Let's take a break and we'll be back with the final part. Global terrestrial stilling is an important sign of how our climate is changing. This reduction in winds affects many things, from wind power generation to weather patterns. Therefore, it is crucial to understand and adapt to this phenomenon in order to protect our environment and future.
第三部分介绍 reduction， 它是名词，意思是减少或是降低的意思。例如 Implementing energy-efficient technologies can lead to a reduction in electricity bills. 实施节能科技可以让电费降低。最后一个例子 The store announced a significant reduction in prices for the holiday season. 该商店宣布节日期间价格大幅下降。
And we are back. So global terrestrial stilling, or lowering wind speeds, is an important sign of how our climate is changing. This reduction in winds affects many things, from wind power generation to weather patterns. That's kind of summarizing what we read in that last paragraph. This reduction, or lowering, lessening, to reduce is to go down. So a reduction is when things go down. Between the summer and the winter, you will expect to see a reduction in temperature, for example. So this will cause all sorts of problems and affect all sorts of things, from wind turbines to weather patterns to airplanes and runway lengths.
Therefore, it is crucial to understand and adapt to this phenomenon in order to protect our environment and future. To adapt is to make something suitable for a new use or to modify something for a new purpose. So we have to change the way we live or change the way we do certain things in order to protect our environment, because we need to adapt to this new phenomenon of wind speed slowing down.
That's absolutely right. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We'll have more good stuff for you in the future, so please come back for that. But for now, let's go over to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要来练习篇章结构的题型。那这次的文章是关于为何气候变迁会让风速变慢。题目有4个空格，可是有5个选项哦。我们先来看这5个句子。 A 选项它提到 Therefore, when these temperature differences are decreased as a result of climate change, the intensity of winds is also decreased. 因此，当这些温度差异因气候变迁而减少时，风的强度也会减少。这句要注意的是 therefore 表示因此所以，那就表示前后有因果关系哦。然后另外要注意 these temperature differences， 这意味着前文应该就有提到温度差异。好 ，B 选项他说 Consequently, slower winds can also affect agriculture by altering the distribution of pollens and seeds. 因此，变慢的风也能够透过改变花粉与种子的分布而影响农业。这句要注意的是 consequently 表示因此， 结果，那这一样意味着前后可能有因果关系。然后要注意句子里面有重点单字是 agriculture 农业。C 选项它提到 and more wind droughts may be on the way， 未来可能会出现更多的风旱。那这句的线索在于 more wind droughts， 这意味着前文可能就有提过曾经发生过的风旱。好，再来 D 选项他说 for example they can have impacts on air travel like causing airplanes to require longer runways due to reduced wind assistance。例如，他们可能会对航空旅行产生影响，像是由于风力辅助减少而导致飞机需要更长的跑道。那这句要注意的是 for example， 这是用来举例说明嘛。然后我们还要注意的是重点单字 air travel 航空旅行。再来E 选项，他提到 Unfortunately, it turns out that winds have been slowing around the globe in recent years, causing concern among scientists worldwide。不幸的是，结果发现近年来全球风速正在逐渐减缓，引起了世界各地科学家的担忧。这句要注意的是 unfortunately， 不幸地，遗憾的是。那还要注意到他有提到 winds have been slowing around the globe， 全球风速正在逐渐减缓的这个现象。好，那现在看完5个选项要表达意思，我们就来做题目吧。好，那第一个空格是文章第一段的最后一句。那前一句就有提到说，如果风持续太久过于徐缓的话，可能是地球气候严重问题的征兆。而文章第二段开头就说明了全球地表风速静止的这个名词的定义，所以我们可以推断空格应该会跟风速减缓有关，才能够连接上下文的叙述。那选项一他提到说，不幸的是，结果发现近年来全球风速正在逐渐减缓，引起了世界各地科学家的担忧。那这边是最适合的答案，它就可以用来承接上下文咯。好，第二空格它位于文章第二段，前面有提到说全球地表风速静止，那最近的一个例子是2021年欧洲大部分地区经历的风旱。接着又提到许多地方的风速比年平均值低 15%， 有些地方甚至更低。那在空格的下一句则提到，政府间气候变迁专门委员会预测，到2100年全球年平均风速可能会下降高达 10%。那我们可以得知，专家预测风速减缓的现象可能会变得越来越严重。而选项 C 就有提到，未来可能会出现更多风旱，在这边是最适合的答案。好，第三个空格它位于文章的第三段，那这段说明了造成风速静止的原因，除了因为建筑物对风造成阻力外，气候变迁更被认为是主要的原因。那空格的前一句提到，风主要是由于温度差异而产生，我们就可以推断空格里面填入的句子应该是在解释气候变迁如何对各地温差造成影响，然后进而导致风速减弱。那选项 A 有提到说，因此当这些温度差异因气候变迁而减少时，风的强度也会减少。这句正好就说明了原因，所以是正确答案。再来第四个空格位于文章第四段，它前面提到全球地表风速静止可能会对风能产业产生巨大影响，但也可能影响我们日常生活和环境的各层面。那空格后方提到，它们也会降低城市的空气品质和扰乱墨西哥湾流，进而导致干旱和冬季风暴。这个是全球地表风速静止影响环境的例子。那可以推断空格可能是在说明风速减弱如何影响我们的日常生活。那选项 D 它有提到说，例如他们可能会对航空旅行产生影响，像是由于风力辅助减少而导致飞机需要更长的跑道，那这是对我们日常生活影响。从关键字 for example 还有 air travel 我们可以得知这是正确的答案。那么至于没有选到的选项 B， 它提到因此变慢的风也能够透过改变花粉与种子的分布而影响农业，这放在任何一个空格都不符合句意，所以是不能选的选项咯。好，那以上这件讲解，我们来回顾这件单字吧。
Panel. The panel of experts will meet soon to determine the most effective solutions to the problem. Disrupt. A major storm is expected to disrupt air travel throughout the region tomorrow. Reduction.The government hopes the new law will lead to a reduction in pollution. Adapt. Climate change will require farmers in various countries to adapt to changing weather patterns. Intensity. The intensity of the summer sun led the cat to seek cover beneath a shady tree. Consequently. Our car broke down on the highway, consequently we'll be late for the meeting. Distribution. The proper distribution of weight to the car's tires helps to keep the vehicle stable. Globe. As the illness spread around the globe, it posed challenges to hospitals in every corner of the world.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Kiki.
See you next time.